Hi there, can anybody hear me?
Yep.
Good. I finally found the link to Echo. I don't know why it took me so long to find it.
Hey, Jim.
Are we about ready to start?
I'm good. Brad said he was going to be here, but I don't know where he's at. So maybe he got tied up on something.
Michael, I also have a hard time finding the meeting notes wiki thing.
So it's the third button from the left that has a pencil in a box on the top of the screen.
Ah, thank you. Forgot it was linked from here.
And also here, let me go to materials. It's also
It
here.
opened it in the same window.
Yeah, so you can go to it there, and in the upper left of that, you can open a new tab, which has got a box with an arrow coming out of it.
Got it. Thank you.
Or you can use this button to get there. I didn't put anything in it yet. Probably should have. Brad and Ira, do you want to try your mic so that you can? And you'll find in the lower right is a mute local microphone button. The one in the upper left takes a second or so to build the audio link. But if you trust your local browser to actually be muted, then you can use the one in the lower right.
Actually, I'm not seeing the lower right one today myself. Weird.
I think I got it all figured out.
Let me see.
Oh, there it is. Okay. It's just hiding under my...
the infinite recursion. This is the one down the upper, lower right, and that's the one in the upper left.
I heard Brad, so.
This is Ira. It seems to be working.
I hear Ira as well. I also hear myself.
I should unmute. We haven't posted a new version for today yet. I guess we have some issues to walk through. So I guess, is everyone ready? Yeah.
As
All right.
Think
as we
so.
can be.
I will remind you all that all this work is under NoteWell, and there's a bunch of BCPs that you may want to look at about IPR disclosures and being nice to each other. Having said that, let's go straight into GitHub, and unless there's any other items for the agenda.
I have one, but I'll do it all the way at the end. So
Okay,
we
you
can
want
go
to
through the
tell us
GitHub.
what it is?
Yeah, it's just having a conversation about the the code appendixes and if we really need them or not.
Okay. We won't
But
forget.
otherwise, we can talk about the pull request has everything that's currently ready for draft 2, and if we want to look at any individual commit, we can, but specifically changes are tried to do one commit per, so we can just scope it like usual. The first is number 16, which was describing the nil and max UUID variants. This is after a long discussion on how we just kind of call those out within the other variant space. Specifically, we have a variant in the IETF that we do everything in, but nil and max kind of don't exist in those. And it's just calling that out in a better way. There's a lot of solutions thrown around, but they were really deep solutions that ultimately we just added a couple lines to the table. So if we look at the commit, we're just adding some lines to the table so that earlier in the document, people can see that those exist. They exist in a variant space if you happen to be using those. It's just for clarification. The next one
I think
on this list.
I think if you're
Yeah.
just acknowledging there, I'm sorry. I think if you're just acknowledging there that the nil and the max are outside the, are in scope but are outside that normal range, then I think that's fine. Right now, without saying that, it looks like it's an accident.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it does. If you click the commit hash to the right, I think Michael, like for number 16, not that goes to the actual comment. Go to the commits tab, and then on the right side it says like C7 under that very first one, C16. It says like C702. Go. That still goes to that. Go back one. On the very right, there's like a blue C70D2. Yeah, click that guy. And this shows the actual change. Specifically in here, it's just the text is green. They're saying, hey, this exists here, here's a forward reference, and then hey, this exists here, here's a forward reference as an FYI. We know that they're not in the space that we use, but if you want more info, go check out that section. So that's specifically what that change did, Jim. The next one, you can just click 49. We'll just go. We can look at them in the. Don't click it that way. Click the commit. But this one's going to Jim's comments on some clarification around nondescript node IDs, and ultimately steering towards the correct one that we want. So in this, I moved some things around. I changed the verbiage and effectively tried to leave no ambiguity that the centralized registry was not what we want to do. So I basically flipped the order. It's second, and then I called out some text that says, hey, we want you to use nondescript node IDs. We're just being complete by showing you the other way people do it. It's not what we want you to do. So the new text effectively is what I just said. We're showing the two methods that exist out there in the world. Don't do that one. Furthermore, you don't need to do either. This is just helping you. And that's what that changes. And I hope addresses Jim's comments on the original draft. Yep. 55, if we click that, is me just change. That's a semantics. We don't have to do it. That's just me changing the name of they were missing an A when you looked at it. Some of them were an example of UUID blah, an example of a UUID. It's semantics and grammar, so no need to worry about that. 56 was, this was caught, we talked about it in the last interim where we remove the ABNF. And when I was fixing some of the commit merges, I messed up. I let this slip through. And this effectively is removing it from the IENA section and actually giving it back to and reusing the one that we have up in layout, which is the better one. So I kind of just pointed back to those and said, hey, the ABNF that we would use is up there, so we don't have two ABNFs. And this is something I thought I did right, but then when I was looking at the document, I realized I somehow undid my changes. So should have already been cool, but that's there. What's next up? 57, that's formatting, we can skip it. I just fixed the markdown. So this is security considerations. There's one gentleman who has never messaged me about anything, but specifically had a lot of strong feelings about random. So what I did was I found another really good use of random in a document that exists out there that is very well updated, has a lot of scenarios on using random. And I effectively cited this and gave it and added it to the effectively the unguessability and some other sections, and just said, hey, if you need additional information, such as that of the RFC that we have here at the IETF, and that one as well, just as an additional one, because I believe it addresses the items that the other gentleman was bringing up as a concern in our very first interim. Again, I have that individual has not come forward and given me any info. The issue's been there for a while. I haven't seen an email, no comments. I just wanted to get it off the tracker, and hopefully.
But it wasn't Peter Osil. It wasn't this person.
It was not. It was not that person. No,
okay.
It wasn't Peter. It wasn't Peter. I don't remember the gentleman's name, but it was not Peter.
Okay.
Was the concern that they don't trust the NIST guidance on this, or?
There was just a very specific
hurt to
scenario. Yeah, there was a scenario that I was looking for some feedback from them on that. It was just, there's concerns about running out of random and initializing random properly and using cryptographic randoms and just all these things about, like, we should provide proper guidance about how to use random in applications. And that's not the goal of the RFC, right? We can cite out other places that provide guidance on how to effectively program randomness in your application or pseudo or cryptographic random, but I don't want to spend sections and talking about, the topic that's better left for other documents. So I just citing it better.
Okay.
That's the goal.
Okay, but this is going to be cited as an informative reference?
I don't know where I cited it at. I guess it probably could be informational. I'll be honest, I don't know the difference between those two.
Okay, well, I mean, a normative reference, of course, is one that we have a dependency on in terms of the requirements in this document, and so it's much more problematic to cite something that is, like say a random academic paper or something like that. I think that's of the sort that this is.
Yeah, this should probably be informative. Yep. I can flip it. I'll write that down. That makes a lot of sense. I put it under normative, I think, just because I put just the default on where I put it at. So let me fix that for draft 02.
Okay.
sorry, that's probably not the right issue, is it?
No, I missed the discussion on that. I fell behind. So
It's
So
number
that's number
26.
26, right?
Yes, 26. Easy fix. I'll go through and check all of the references before I submit draft 2 as well, just with that guidance you gave me, because nobody's told me that, and that's just easy layman terms. So
Yeah,
appreciate that.
if you don't need to read the document to implement, then it's informative.
Got it.
And
So-
you know, that kind of actually you realize there's like so many things that simplifies it. But anyway,
That's fine. Cool. 50. If we click it, I'll know what it is. If we look at the commit, next up on the list is SHA 256. This was my first attempt at SHA 256. Specifically, us making and laying out based on that discussion we had of the past few weeks about where we should put SHA 256, and I think the agreement from the discussion was still put it in the UUID version 8 space, but let's provide the further discussion was let's just provide some extra guidance around that, and that there's going to be another commit that fixes that on that base feedback guidance. So this was first attempt. We're going to put it in UUID V8, and then if you go back to the commit list, we'll see the second one, which is scroll down just a little bit, which is going to be that right there again. Yep, this is the second half of that, which is effectively inside of the best practices section where we have name-based UUID generation. I'm calling out that we need to use that namespace in conjunction with the hash space in conjunction with the namespace in conjunction with the name, and those 3 values can give us a nice version 8 that shouldn't conflict with some others. And then I provided basically hash spaces for all of the SHA-2, SHA-3, and shake algorithms. And then I also provided a singular test vector tested against my code and the other gentleman's code, LiosK, on effectively a SHA-256, SHA-256 with the example namespace and the example name. And, both codes resulted in the same thing, which follows what they should have. Go ahead.
does this need to be an IANA registry?
We had talked about it in that page, and I think the main thing was that the namespaces themselves are also not IANA registries. So I don't know if we want to do the same for like we want to extend hash space.
The issue is someone comes along with a new hash. How do they amend this list to include it? Because I think that the point was that we want deterministic things. They can just put it in the document, but they may not even have a document. Like not every IANA process has to have a document. This could be just expert review, literally, without a document.
Yeah, and I completely agree. I think it's kind of overkill for this.
Yeah.
To have that to use IANA resources on this again, because this is the 1% use case. We're just trying to future proof and think of what the IESG is really going to want from us in this type of spec, and I don't see very many people
you're defining there's a subtype field, a subversion field that defines which hash it is.
So the process is, I think it's down here, right? That basically you start with the UUID for that hash, right? And then you added some other stuff to it, and putting it together, you get a name-based hash that is also encodes the type of hash you use to make that namespace hash. Did I get that
And
right,
and how
Kaiser?
does it encode the type of hash? Where is that? Is there a bit field there somewhere that's the type of hash field?
No, there's no bit field for the type of hash. It's just the hash is used as one of the inputs of the hash space, namespace, and name. All three together are the inputs that get the output of that type of hash. So if you're using 256, you use the 256 hash space with the namespace with the name. And if you're using 512, you use the
I'm-
512 hash
So
space.
so if
I'm
I
confused
start
then.
with example.com, right? Here's the name, www.example.com, and I want to make a namespace hash from that. I want to use a hash to make a V8 namespace UUID. Then basically what I'm doing is I'm mixing this plus this plus this, which basically results in it being unique. And if I changed hashes, I also get a different value, but it's deterministic.
Okay, but it's not possible to look at a UUID and determine what hash was used to generate it.
That's correct. But
That's correct. Yeah.
But as we in the document also state, introspection and opacity of the device of the UUID isn't something that we really want in the UUID, right? Like we have the versions and variants to provide some space, but other than that, everything else that's input kind of doesn't matter. Is a easy way to say it.
Okay, but if you had a distributed system where one actor receives a hash from the other, and let's say the generating actor is in the process of doing some sort of a transition from hash A to hash B, which is considered to be better. It isn't possible for the receiver to know which hash was used.
No, but they know it's not SHA-1 or MB5.
Yeah.
So they know it's something more modern than that.
Okay.
That's all they know. Yeah.
But we're talking about far in the future when when SHA-512 is being deprecated, and they want to go to SHA-1024, let's say. It isn't possible to look at one of these hashes and know which one is used in order to know how to generate something that perhaps matches with it. You have to do it by trial and error, basically, is what you're saying. Say, well, gee, that one didn't work. Let's try this other hash.
Or whoever is doing this and putting it in a UID v8 would have to encode that information in there somehow. But yeah, obviously that's not standardized as part of this document for sure. It's an interesting point.
The comment about not taking a bit is, at the end of the day, we have 122 bits, and Brad and we're going to allocate 1 bit or 2 bits, I forget, to make this 121, so we could have some interesting versions, right, and variant stuff. And the amount of backlash we got from everybody for just changing a single bit and going from 122 down to 121, and the levels of entropy and all these other conversations on how that shook out was we backed down from changing any of that. So if anything, also we talked about truncating. If anything, this topic makes a lot of sense for something like UUID long, as an example, Jim and Michael, where we have longer UUIDs where 128 is the base and it can go up to a larger number. You can introduce the entire SHA-512 hash and then, like you said, a subversion hash base. But at the moment, we got 128 bits, 122 that are usable, and taking any more away really angers a lot of folks.
So if you really wanted to have identifiable things, then you might actually want to have one of these long things where you say You start with here's the SHA-256 thing, and then there's the result afterwards, and you would just have some longer.
Yeah, or you share that right there, that on line 2760, that UUID, and say, I use this UUID to create it, and now everybody knows that one identifies SHA-256, right? That is
Right.
a identifier unto itself. It's unique for
Yep.
that SHA hash space. So there's ways to do it. It's just not embedded in the end UUID being output by the algorithm. Kind of reminds me of like HTTP's method for like MD5 authentication or SHA, where you put all the ingredients that you used, and then they have a shared secret, and they kind of send the ingredients, they compute, and they know ultimately what happened there, but they never actually sent that final result across the wire. Similar to kind of Diffie-Hellman, you send some ingredients. An application could send that SHA-256. They know the DNS and namespace, and they know how to create it themselves from the ingredients.
Is this UUID well known somewhere? This DNS one?
Yeah, that one's defined in RFC 4122, and it's
Okay.
redefined obviously in ours, right? So we have names. We have like 4 namespace UUIDs, and then I allocated a bunch of UUID v4 hash space UUIDs for hash space identification. So yes, people know what that one is, and it's used in a lot of.
That's a version 1. There it is. Okay, that's a version 1. We created it at the beginning of time, right? So.
Yep. They think, I don't know what date they use, but they created
That's in the
4 of
appendix.
those. And
Okay.
Yeah, they ticked a single bit up, and we're like, okay, these are the 4 we're using for these specific namespaces, and we just reuse the same logic for hash space.
Well, maybe
Yeah,
this is something to clarify and write up more clearly in the change in the post. Let's post this version, and then let's bring this up as an issue into the working group. I mean, we're only 5 people here today, and wonder whether or not it's an issue. I mean, obviously we have this property for MD5 and SHA-1 that you can know what it is by just looking at it, and in trying to deprecate it, those things we're not. Yeah.
I think it would be really beneficial. Sorry, I was just going to say, I think it would be beneficial if there were, if someone has a use case of like what more specifically, what real world problem we're trying to solve with this.
Right.
Just because, yeah. Anyway, I just think that would be a part of helping.
That's what I'm
decide which way to
struggling
go.
with as well here in trying to figure out the requirements.
Yeah, I think the real.
So we've opened the door to using new and other hash functions, but we haven't made it clear that the UID is using them, and we're not sure why that matters in the world. Fair enough. Let's continue on.
Yeah, go to that number 43 right there on February 6th. That guy is, this one was the expansion of the multiplexed fields, the high, low inversion. This is effectively changing all of our stuff so that, where we see on line 654 time, high, inversion, it actually has version as the 4 bits, time, high as the 4 bits. This rippled obviously throughout the entire document. If we change the field, I had to change the definitions. We had to change the test vectors. We had to change kind of everything that referenced time, high, and version. And same with, for these specifically, clock sequence high res and clock sequence low, because that was a multiplex of the variant, 2-bit variant, and the clock sequence. So ultimately, split those apart. I think it looks better. This was feedback from a lot of folks that they wanted this change. We were keeping it for backwards compatibility. It's a lot of stuff, but it makes sense to just rip that Band-Aid off and fix it. So that's what this fixes. And this is ultimately what we changed. And
Okay.
Thank you. That's much
it's-
better.
Yeah. I don't know who's running as well. I know you can do a unified diff, you can do a split diff, and sometimes it's easier, but we'll do the unified. Let's go to the
Sorry, what do you want? You wanted me to change the diff?
no, you can
What is
leave
a
the diff
rich
like
diff?
this. No,
rich
there's
diff,
one that does
but-
side by side. I don't want to. No, don't do that.
Maybe my window just needs to be bigger.
I think it's one of the settings
wider.
options in the top left.
Yeah.
That little setting guy. But yeah, it's probably gonna be
Yeah.
wider. Look at the
Stick
next
with
one.
what you got. It's fine.
There you go. That's what you want.
It just kind of shows specifically because our window's not wide enough. It would show the entire table, I guess, was what I was trying to just. You could see the whole thing without interleaving lines. But yeah, you're fine. We can go back to unified. And then 61 is next up. This is, I'm trying to remember what this was. Oh yeah, so this was text that was copied from 4122 by themselves, raw, no modifications, no changes. And what I went through here, and I just changed the text so that it reads better throughout the document. It's a little bit more formal, and effectively it conveys the same thing, but it kind of isn't as hard to read, I guess, because when I was reading through this section, I had to read it like 5-10 times to understand what we're trying to convey, and it was just copied from the old doc. So it just cleaning up the text so it gels better with the rest of the document. And that's the next 3 commits are actually just that. They're just looking at what the old RFC had and if there's a better way to rephrase it. So we can look at those pretty quickly. 47 was, I believe, the same thing for, I'm trying to think which one this is. Yeah, this is the UUID generator states. One of the comments from Jim, I believe, is, the old document said, oh, they could just say they're unavailable. What does that mean? What is unavailable? What's the return there? So I put text around what the generator states mean, because this is a mesh of like 3 sections in the RFC, old RFC, and then provided effectively some guidance more around the unavailable section, and ultimately just gave this one another fresh coat of paint to kind of just really bring that section home, because again, it's just copy and paste, and it didn't really read well top to bottom when you just kind of jump to that section and kind of just go, what does this even mean in the grand scheme of things? And really it applies to version 6 and 7 and version 1, and then addressing Jim's comment. And then 44 is the final item. And this one specifically is talking about, this is, I think, another comment from, I think it was Jim. And specifically it was why we chose the timestamps and why Unix, why the rollover is not really a problem. And ultimately it was calling out the final validity date of these timestamps, just so they're more apparent in that, the rollover event is not a 2038 problem. This isn't a problem in the 2000s. It's a problem in 5623 and 10,088.89. So we got a really long time to worry about that, and we shouldn't roll over those timestamps anytime soon.
Cool. Yeah, I know a lot of people are focused on the rollover problem, and nice to say that we don't have one.
Yes, sir. And I was thinking the same thing. I'm involved with a lot of those conversations here, so it makes sense to call out. Very last commit I actually forgot about because it was so late, is back on the SHA-256 kind of stuff. So the shake algorithms can produce variable rate outputs. So the very, very last one down there on February 10th. And this is just adding a line to that effectively says if you've got one of those shake algorithms for SHA-3 that are used, you have to output 128 bits for your hash, or else you're not going to be able to fill out the UUID. So, just calling out that if you're going to do those, it must be 120 bits or larger and truncate some data. I didn't realize shake was, I didn't realize it was variable output rate, but it's a good call out.
I don't know if you ask for 130 bits, are the first 128 the same as if you asked for 128?
I don't know. I'd have to run some through the pro. I'm not very familiar with shake,
so
but
it
I
might be
understand
that.
Yeah.
It might be that we just strike the or larger.
Yeah, let me put an item to test some shake algorithms. I can throw some inputs in and just run it over, hello world or something, and just see what happens when I do different rates. And if it is different based on the output, yeah, I'll strike the or larger.
Yeah, the or larger seems like a problem because, we're defining something that's always 128 bits.
Yeah, in my head, I was going more with how it does it with SHA-1 and SHA-256, where we just drop the bits off at the end. But that's a good point on maybe it does a different output based on what we request. So I'll test it and I'll give us a good answer. Something crispy. But that's the general gist of what's in draft 2. A lot of cleanups, the SHA-256 and beyond stuff, and just in general, mostly formatting. If we go back to the pull request itself, we can see the high level bullets of what was merged. Yep.
Okay.
And clarifications, cleanups, and only big technical things that SHA stuff. Go ahead.
I was going to say, be less shy about committing and posting new documents, right? I think that it's okay to, probably even good to, it would have been better if you had posted the document and then we were looking at the diffs in the document. That is usually easier, but we could come back to here to see why. I'm just saying, you're maybe don't need to be so shy about getting quite consensus approval.
I took my foot off the pedal because the first time I did it, I think I did it too fast. But yeah, I can do that. Got it.
Okay.
So
so you're going to merge this, or you want me to push the button here today?
No, let me fix a couple of these things that we talked about, and then I'll merge it.
Anyway, okay, it says I could merge it, but I won't. Okay. And we're going to post a new version. So what further with 13 more issues? So a bunch of these are actually, these are issues which we've just walked through. So a bunch of these are going to get closed, I think.
All of those are going to get closed except for the final one, which is the should must check, where somebody goes through and just checks and makes sure that every should has an alternative and every must has a thing. Basically the thing we talked about, which I slated for draft 1, but now it's in draft 2, where we just kind of sit down and just say, did we cover all of the basis on those should musts? And
anyway, that also is a working group last call review.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Adding, you can always do it. I'm just saying, it's something that, one of the problems is that, people add new text during working group last call, and then you have to come back and think about that again anyway. So
yeah, okay.
you might as well.
I know to be in compliance with the next IETF meeting 116, I can't submit anything after the 23rd of March, I think is the date.
Submission closes for a couple of weeks,
3/13
just prior to a meeting.
Yeah, 3/13 is when I can't submit anything else. So I got some time if we wanted to do a draft.
There we go.
3 or something, right?
There we go.
Yeah, cut
Yeah,
off 3/13.
3/13.
Okay, yeah. So, I
But
can
just to be
submit
clear,
this.
so it stays closed, and then it opens again the Saturday of the meeting. But anyway, we're not planning to meet in person there, as I recall, right, Jim?
Right.
So yeah. So my mind is, what do we have left to do to get to working group last call? We need to post draft 02. We need to do the should review, which is this item here, I guess. And what else? I mean, I think we probably need to probably advertise the working group last call, probably in a bunch of other places that are using UUIDs.
Yeah.
I mean, outside of the IETF, we just need to make people aware of it. We might want to make it a little bit longer than 2 weeks as the normal, just to let people that propagate. But let's get 02 posted.
Yep. Got it. If it's fine, I want to go to that last item on my agenda, Bash, just to talk about it.
Oh yeah, agenda bash, right? Okay.
Sorry.
What was that again?
So
Go,
basically,
yeah.
code appendixes, and nothing's changed. So if we look at draft 01, there's a bunch of appendixes in the final document, which are example C code on creating UUID versions 1 through 8, right? I changed the multiplexed fields on version 1, and almost everything in version 1 through 5 relied back on those multiplex fields. So there's a lot of work to change all of that code. That opens us up, obviously, to erratas and bugs, because not every code has bugs in some way. There's some interesting copyrights. Brad and I created 6, 7, and 8 because we wanted to mimic what RFC 4122 had. So at the time, we really didn't want 6, 7, and 8, but we did it because we wanted to show and be compliant and kind of have the same structure that the old document has. So people expected it, they got it. My question for the group is, do we need any of this in Appendix A example code? Because if so, it's going to be a lot of work to go through and modify 1 through 5, and then as well as 6. And then finally, it just opens us up to potential erratas and all kinds of other things that could be a problem.
So I guess I'll say two things. One, we don't need it. Two, 4122 it still exists, right? If there's been no change in this code and we don't think there's any value in repeating it, then just say the example code from RFC 4122 continues to be valid or whatever. This is contested on Red Hat 4.
I know, it's like super old.
Wow. Windows
super
NT 4.
old, yeah.
It's got a copyright from Digital Equipment Corporation, for heaven's sakes.
Yeah,
No,
there you go.
like...
That's 1989. There we go. Yeah.
It's almost like this is something we put in you take this, you put it in a UUID GitHub and call it a day and say, here's the C code implementation. Kind of like the entire, I would go back to SRTP because I'm really intimate with that document. It's like there's a lib SRTP, there's implementations, and then there's the RFC. The code isn't in the RFC, rarely is. There's structures, maybe C structures and stuff, but I don't see RFCs with just literal C and H, C code and stuff in them. It's kind of an abnormal thing.
I don't have any problem with ripping it out and just saying that the code, the 4122 code continues to, is believed to be compliant. Would you still want?
Did we have any errata? Did we have any errata on the? Did we have any errata on Appendix A from 4122?
There were 2 that were incorrect in the namespace stuff. Yes, there was 2
in the namespace. So there was here.
No, not this. No. not this, in the code that generates your namespace of A1. Sorry, it's like a subsection of A1. There's a namespace. I fixed it, but there was a whole section in here, and this thing generated it wrong, basically based on the inputs and some other stuff. So I had to fix that.
Oh, so 4122 is not correct then.
I would just take it out and not say anything. We don't have a requirement that there be example code for everything that we publish.
Yeah. But
And
if you have fixed the code and you want to throw it in the GitHub, you know, literally in this GitHub, right, in a new place, we can do exactly that.
Okay. If we're fine with yanking it, I can get that. I mean, that's just deleting. Deleting's not hard. I can delete this and verify it compiles up nicely for draft 2. If that's something that we're okay with. It goes along with. I think it goes nicely.
I would take out the sample code myself, but that's just as an individual, not with any authority.
Brad, Ira?
I agree to take it out.
I would say it's unanimous at this point.
Got it. Okay. It's gone. I'll get it out, and draft 2 will not have that. That was my only agenda bash. I just wanted to talk about that because it was important since I just made
That's a good one.
those multiplex changes. I think the test vectors are better anyway. It's just speaking out loud. Like that's what other RFCs do. They provide your inputs. And we have test vectors. I think that's way better than the example code. I mean, there's so many languages nowadays, you can't cover them. So I think we're much better placed.
I'm finding that, yes, I agree. Delete the sample code. Do not, and don't do an informative reference to the sample code in 4122. It remains published and shows when you go to the RFC, repository for this new RFC, it will show that it supersedes 4122. But that's a question I had. Does this RFC update for 4122, or does it obsolete it?
Obsolete.
Okay. But you'd still be able to see that 4122 was the predecessor.
Yep. It's going to be burnt into electrons till the end of the universe.
Yep. Okay.
Or at least until those timestamp things roll over.
Exactly. That's all I had, folks. I appreciate that.
Okay. 10 minutes from the end. Anybody else? We can finish early. We don't have another meeting scheduled at this point. I think I'd like to somehow get to working group last call by the end of March. Maybe earlier, like the start of it. I think we need a 3 or 4 week or working group last call. I think we need to spread the word, widely, because I think they're used all over the place. Maybe we have to communicate with some of these ISO and ITU people that had a document that looked sort of similar. That may have to go out through a liaison. I don't know. I guess we'll just ask them to do that and be done with it.
I would urge a 4-week last call.
Yep.
And a certain amount of spelunking for which other standards bodies. Obviously, I would say ITU, ISO, and IEEE. Possibly.
Yeah.
And then even after, telling that standards body, what you mean to tell is somebody who's through an IETF liaison, if so that it gets to the right. Like in ITU, it would be study group 17, security.
So maybe I'll start a thread just asking who else we should talk. We should just ask people to, who else should we notify both during the working group last call. We can get that list. All right. Shall we go?
I think we're done then.
All right. Great. Thank you, Kaiser. Thank you, Ira and Brad.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everybody.
Appreciate your guidance.
Great,
See you,
thanks.
everybody.
Bye, Jim.